A deep hum vibrates through the stones of an empty temple. This is not a random echo. It is a 5,000-year-old mystery waiting to be heard. Did ancient architects intentionally design their holiest spaces to manipulate sound, to make stones sing and whispers carry for miles? We are embarking on a journey into the fascinating world of archaeoacoustics, where archaeology, architecture, and ancient spirituality collide. By the end, you will understand how these spaces were not just built to be seen, but engineered to be felt, using sound as a tool for awe and transformation. We will hear the oracles whisper in a Maltese tomb and feel the disorienting roar of conch shells in Peruvian labyrinths. What is the most profound sound you have ever felt in a place built by human hands? That deep hum is the voice of acoustic resonance. It is a principle so fundamental you have experienced it yourself. Think of singing in a tiled shower. Your voice suddenly feels richer, fuller, more powerful. The sound waves from your voice bounce off the hard, parallel walls and floor, reinforcing themselves. They build upon each other, amplifying certain tones and making the sound linger. That is resonance in action, the amplification and prolongation of sound within a space because of its specific shape and materials. Now scale that up. Picture shouting across a vast, smooth-walled canyon. The sound does not just travel, it returns to you as a clear, booming echo. The canyon's shape captures your voice and sends it back. This happens because every sound has a frequency, a specific pitch or note. When a space, like a canyon or a shower, has dimensions that match the wavelength of a particular frequency, magic happens. The sound waves do not just fade away, they bounce back and forth in perfect sync, creating what scientists call standing waves. These are pockets of intense, vibrating energy where the sound seems to hang in the air, sustained and powerful. This sustaining effect has another name, reverberation. It is the tail end of a sound, the time it takes for a note to completely decay into silence after the source has stopped. In a carpeted living room, reverberation is short, sound is absorbed, but in a large stone hall, reverberation can last for many seconds, allowing notes to blend and wash over you. Ancient builders, though they lacked our scientific vocabulary, understood these effects on an intuitive, experiential level. They learned that by carving stone in certain ways, they could create spaces that did not just hold sound, but actively shaped it, giving it power and presence. With this foundation, the true genius of their temples begins to come into focus. This intuitive understanding was put to its first great test deep beneath the island of Malta. Carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago, the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni is a labyrinth of underground chambers, a temple that feels less built and more gently excavated from the earth itself. Its rooms are rounded, organic, almost womb-like, a stark contrast to the angular monuments we often associate with ancient megaliths. Walking through its low, echoing halls, you move from a world of light into one of profound, resonant darkness. And within this darkness lies a chamber that seems to defy simple explanation. It is known today as the Oracle Chamber. This small, oval room contains a curious feature, a narrow niche carved into the wall at about chest height. If a person speaks into this niche in a deep, male voice, something extraordinary happens. The sound does not just project, it amplifies in a way that is physically unsettling. A low, chanting tone spoken into that niche does not remain a simple voice. It triggers a resonance so powerful it vibrates the very stone under your feet. The sound swells, becoming a deep, omnipresent hum that seems to emanate from the walls themselves, filling not just the oracle chamber but echoing through the connected halls of the entire subterranean complex. It is a bone-rattling experience, one that modern visitors describe as both awe-inspiring and strangely primal. The immediate question is, of course, why? Why would Neolithic people who possessed no metal tools go to such painstaking effort to sculpt this specific acoustic effect into their most sacred space? One compelling theory suggests it was a tool for ritual and transformation. In the flickering light of oil lamps, with the air thick with the smell of earth and incense, a priest or shaman speaking into that niche would not sound human. His voice would be transformed into the booming, disembodied voice of the earth or a god. This could have been used to deliver oracles, pronouncements from a divine source that felt terrifyingly real to those gathered in the echoing darkness. Another line of thought points to the psychological impact. Such intense, low-frequency resonance is known to affect human brainwaves and physiology. It can induce states of deep relaxation, disorientation, or even trance. The experience in the oracle chamber may have been carefully engineered to alter the consciousness of participants to prepare them for visions or spiritual journeys. The true purpose remains wrapped in silence, but the effect is undeniable. The builders of the hypogeum did not just discover resonance by accident. They learned to harness it, carving stone with stone to create a machine for making mystery. And as we will see, this was not an isolated phenomenon. While the oracle chamber harnessed a deep, earth-shaking resonance, another ancient culture pursued a different kind of acoustic magic, one channeled through light. Across the sea in Ireland's Boyne Valley stands Newgrange, a massive grass-covered mound older than both Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Egypt. This is not a simple burial mound, but a meticulously engineered passage tomb, its entrance guarded by a wall of gleaming white quartz stone and intricate spiral carvings that seem to swirl with meaning. To enter is to walk down a long, narrow passageway lined with immense stones, a corridor that feels less like a hallway and more like a throat leading into the heart of the earth. This 60-foot passage is not just a walkway, it is a perfect sound channel. Any noise made at the entrance, a whisper or a footstep, is funneled and focused, carried with unnatural clarity into the central chamber deep within the mound. The chamber itself is a cruciform shape with a high, corbelled roof that closes in a dark, silent point overhead. Modern acoustic tests reveal this space has its own resonant frequency, a specific low note that the stone architecture naturally amplifies and sustains. Now layer this sonic architecture with its most famous feature, the winter solstice sunrise, for just a few days around December 21st, as the sun crests the horizon. A slender beam of golden light pierces a special roof box above the entrance. It travels down that long stone passage, a river of light moving silently through the darkness until it floods the central chamber, illuminating the carved walls and the ritual basins within. The visual spectacle is breathtaking, but what if it was only half the experience? Imagine the scene over 5,000 years ago. A select group gathers in the pitch-black chamber, awaiting the sun's rebirth. As the first sliver of light begins its slow crawl toward them, a ritual begins. Deep, rhythmic drumming starts at the entrance, its sound waves compressed and intensified by the narrow passage, arriving in the chamber not as distant beats but as a powerful, encompassing vibration that shakes the air. Chanting voices join, their tones amplified by the chamber's own resonance, blending with the drum beats into a wall of sacred sound. At the precise moment the sunlight finally bursts into the room, the auditory and visual experiences would have fused into something overwhelming. The sound, already magnified by the architecture, would have felt like the very voice of the sun itself, a booming, resonant announcement of the new year. This was not a concert hall designed for pleasure, but a carefully tuned instrument for spiritual awe. The stones of Newgrange suggest its builders understood that true power lay in uniting what you see with what you feel in your very bones. But the manipulation of sacred sound was not limited to solemn chants or rhythmic drumming. In the high Andes of Peru, at the ceremonial center of Chavín de Huántar, the ancient priests engineered an experience of pure sonic terror. This sprawling stone complex, built over 3,000 years ago, is a masterpiece of psychological architecture. Beneath its towering temples lies a dark, windowless maze, a network of narrow underground galleries, staircases, and ventilation ducts carved with the images of snarling jaguars and transformative gods. The air here is still, cold, and carries a profound, waiting silence. It was in these depths that archaeologists made a startling discovery: dozens of large conch shell trumpets known as pututus. These were not mere decorations, they were instruments, their mouthpieces worn smooth from ancient lips. When researchers gathered the courage to blow these shells in the confined stone galleries, the result was not a simple musical note. The narrow, twisting corridors acted like a monstrous amplifier. The deep, bellowing blast of the pututu multiplied, reflecting off the hard granite walls in a chaotic storm of echoes. The sound waves collided and reinforced each other, creating a disorienting, overwhelming roar that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. In the pitch blackness, with no visual reference, this cacophony would have been utterly terrifying, a physical force that vibrated in the chest and short-circuited rational thought. This leads to a compelling and unsettling theory. The priesthood of Chavin may have used this engineered acoustic chaos as a form of sonic warfare, a weapon of psychological manipulation. Imagine a pilgrim or initiate led deep into the labyrinth, already anxious in the oppressive darkness. Suddenly, the godlike roars of unseen trumpets would engulf them, a sound so immense it felt supernatural. In that state of primal fear and sensory overload, a whispered voice from a hidden duct could easily be perceived as the voice of a god issuing a divine command. The priests, who knew the secret layout of the ducts and galleries, could stage-manage this entire experience, using sound to demonstrate their power and communicate their oracles with terrifying authority. It was the ultimate illusion, where architecture itself became the medium for a miracle. The roaring darkness of Chavin forces us to consider sound as a tool of power, but another ancient wonder suggests a far more subtle and mysterious purpose. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as a silent sentinel on the desert plateau, its geometric perfection so overwhelming we often forget to listen. While not a temple in the conventional sense, its interior chambers whisper of an acoustic design that continues to baffle and intrigue researchers. The most compelling sonic anomaly lies within the Grand Gallery, that steep, narrow corridor leading upward to the king's chamber. Its precise, corbelled walls and soaring ceiling create an acoustic environment unlike any other. Sound does not simply echo here, it behaves in a strange and specific way. A sharp handclap or spoken word at the gallery's base does not produce a random reverberation. Instead, the sound travels upward along the smooth limestone, reflecting off the angled ceiling in a series of rapid, distinct pulses. It creates a fluttering, almost melodic effect, as if the architecture itself is shaping the noise into a patterned sequence. This is not the chaotic roar of Chavin. It sounds engineered, deliberate. This leads us to the heart of the pyramid, the king's chamber, a room built entirely from immense blocks of granite. Granite is an incredibly dense, hard stone, and spaces built from it have very distinct resonant properties. When researchers have tested the chamber, they have identified specific low frequencies at which the room itself seems to vibrate most powerfully, its natural resonant tones. One prominent theory, though highly speculative, suggests these frequencies might align with the natural resonant frequency of the human body, or even certain brainwave states associated with deep meditation and relaxation. The idea is captivating if unproven. Could the pyramid's builders have designed this granite box not just as a tomb, but as a kind of resonance chamber, a place where the very air hummed at a pitch that quieted the mind and altered consciousness? Proponents of this view sometimes link it to ancient concepts of spiritual enlightenment or the manipulation of subtle energy, ideas that venture far beyond mainstream archaeology. It is crucial to acknowledge the deep controversy here. Many Egyptologists point out the complete lack of textual evidence from the pyramids era describing any acoustic intent. The effects we measure today could be a fascinating byproduct of the pyramid's magnificent geometry, not its primary purpose, yet the questions are too compelling to dismiss outright. Why choose granite, a notoriously difficult material to quarry and shape, for the central chamber when softer limestone was used everywhere else? Was it for durability alone or for its unique sonic signature? The silence of the stones offers no definitive answer, which is precisely what keeps the mystery alive. The Great Pyramid challenges us to move beyond what we see and to listen, truly listen, to what its ancient stones might still be trying to say. And if sound could be woven into the very fabric of such a monument, what other wonders might be hidden in plain hearing? The silent perfection of the pyramids gives way to a different kind of wonder, one that sings when touched. In the sun-drenched ruins of ancient Ionia, the Temple of Apollo at Didyma stands not as a complete building, but as a promise of colossal scale. Its most striking feature is a forest of 120 marble columns, each one towering over 50 feet high and so massive that several people linking arms could not encircle their base. Walking among these giants, you are surrounded by a petrified grove, a monument to human ambition carved from the living earth. But if you were to take a small stone and gently tap one of these columns, something magical happens. Instead of a dull thud, the marble rings out with a clear, sustained musical note. Move to the next column and tap it, and you may hear a different pitch. Scattered throughout the ruins, certain columns produce distinct, pure tones, transforming the temple into a giant, scattered stone xylophone waiting for its player. This is not a random occurrence. The columns were carved from specific types of marble, each with its own density and crystalline structure, which determines how it vibrates and the note it produces when struck. The sheer consistency of the phenomenon across multiple columns forces a compelling question. Was this melodic quality a happy accident of material and construction, or was it an intentional, sacred design? The Temple of Apollo was home to a famed oracle, a place where the divine will was sought through ritual and prophecy. It is easy to envision a ceremony where priests, or perhaps even chosen pilgrims, moved solemnly through the columned hall. With a mallet wrapped in soft leather, they would strike specific columns in a precise sequence, their blows summoning deep, resonant chords that echoed through the sacred precinct. These were not mere sounds, they were vibrations you felt in your chest, a physical manifestation of harmony that seemed to emanate from the earth itself. In a culture that believed music held the power to order the soul and commune with the gods, such an architectural instrument would have been the ultimate tool. The melodies created would have been unlike any other, born from the mountain and shaped by human hands into a form that could literally make the temple sing. This transforms our understanding of the space. It was not a silent stage for whispered prophecies, but potentially an active instrument in the ritual, its very stones tuned to call down the divine. The singing columns of Didyma suggest that for some ancient builders, sacred architecture was not complete until it could also perform. From the roaring darkness of Chavin to the singing columns of Didyma, a pattern emerges. These ancient sites, separated by oceans and millennia, share a common architectural language, a grammar of stone written not for the eye but for the ear. When we step back and listen to their blueprints, we find they were using the same fundamental tools to sculpt silence into something sacred. The first and perhaps most powerful tool is the long, narrow corridor. Think of it not as a hallway but as a sound channel. In the hypogeum of Malta, in the passage tomb of Newgrange, and in the underground galleries of Chavin, we see this design repeated. A confined, straight space acts like the barrel of a cannon for sound. It compresses sound waves, focuses their energy, and projects them with startling clarity over distance. A whisper at one end becomes a clear, disembodied voice at the other. This was not about convenience, it was about control, directing sacred sound or terrifying noise exactly where the priests intended it to go. Then we have the ceilings, domed, vaulted, or corbelled chambers like those in Newgrange or the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid do not simply create grand space overhead. They create acoustic focal points. The curved surfaces catch sound waves and reflect them back down, concentrating them into the center of the room. In a domed space, if you stand directly in the center and speak, your voice is amplified back to you, making you the sonic focus of the entire chamber. It is a natural spotlight for sound, perfect for an oracle or a leader whose words needed to carry divine weight. Finally, the choice of material was absolutely critical. These builders did not use just any stone. They consistently selected materials with perfect acoustic properties. Limestone, marble, and granite are dense, hard, and smooth. When sound hits them, it does not get absorbed like it would by wood, fabric, or mud brick. It reflects, it bounces, it rings. The marble columns at Didyma sing because marble vibrates with a pure musical tone. The granite of the King's Chamber sustains a deep hum because of its incredible density. This was a conscious selection. Transporting these heavy materials over vast distances was a monumental effort, so their sonic qualities must have been part of their sacred value. So, what does this recurring toolkit tell us? It strongly suggests a shared, experiential understanding of sound physics, developed over centuries of trial and observation. Ancient architects learned that parallel walls channel, curved ceilings focus, and specific stones sing. They may not have had the equations, but they had the ears. They understood the emotional and spiritual impact of a space that could transform a human voice into something superhuman. This was not decorative architecture, it was functional, psychological engineering. The temples were, in a very real sense, the world's first sound systems, designed to make the intangible power of belief something you could physically feel vibrating in your chest. And if this understanding was so widespread, it begs a deeper, more provocative question. Were these resonant chambers merely stages for ritual, or could their vibrations have been intended to do something more direct, something to the human body and mind itself? But the most profound acoustic effects would have remained silent without the human voice and hand. A resonant temple is like a magnificent, unplayed instrument. Its true power was unlocked only when filled with the sounds of ceremony, a carefully composed ritual soundscape designed to merge with the stone. Think of the deep, rhythmic thrum of a large frame drum. In a space like Newgrange's chamber, each beat would not just be heard. It would be felt as a pressure wave in the chest, the sound lingering and blending with the next beat into a continuous, vibrating pulse. This was not mere music for entertainment, it was a sonic tool for synchronization. The steady, predictable rhythm would have aligned the heartbeats and breathing of everyone present, creating a powerful, shared physiological state, a collective trance that bound the group together as one body. Alongside the drums rose the human voice, but not in conversation or song as we know it. In traditions from Hindu temples to medieval cathedrals, we find the use of repetitive, monotonal chanting. A mantra recited hundreds of times, or the slow, resonant plainsong of Gregorian chant, serves a specific acoustic purpose. By holding a single, sustained note, the chanters find and amplify the natural resonant frequency of the room itself. The sound waves build upon each other, filling the space with a thick, humming energy that seems to come from everywhere at once. In a vast Gothic cathedral, this creates the famous ethereal atmosphere, the sense that the sound is hovering in the air, divine and detached. In a smaller granite chamber, it could produce a disorienting, all-enveloping buzz that short-circuits normal thought. The repetition itself is key. It allows the mind to let go of linear thinking, opening a door to other states of awareness. Then, cutting through this drone came the sharp, clear sounds of punctuation. The metallic ring of a bell or the sudden, collective clap of hands served as acoustic shocks. In a highly reverberant space, a single bell strike does not end with a ting. It unfolds into a complex cascade of harmonics that shimmer and decay for seconds, a sonic bloom that cleanses the auditory palate. A coordinated clap would have created a startling burst of sound like thunder within the temple that could mark a transition in the ritual or symbolize a moment of divine presence. These percussive sounds interacted with the architecture in thrilling ways, their sharp attacks exciting the stone to reveal its full sonic character. When combined, this soundscape, chanting, drumming, and bells was not a background soundtrack. It was an active technology of transformation. The low frequencies of drums and deep chants vibrated through the body, massaging the internal organs and potentially shifting brainwave patterns toward theta states associated with deep meditation and vivid imagery. The sustained resonant tones created a sensory overload, blurring the boundary between the self and the sound, between the individual and the group. In this altered state, within a space that itself seemed to be humming with power, the message of the ritual would bypass intellectual skepticism and imprint directly on the psyche. The ceremony used the temple's acoustics to turn belief into a physical, undeniable experience. So if sound could be wielded to shape human consciousness within these sacred spaces, what does that tell us about the ultimate goal? Were these rituals merely for worship, or were they attempting something far more ambitious, like using vibration as a key to unlock hidden doors of perception? This pursuit of altered states through vibration leads us to a modern and deeply controversial question. Could there be one perfect note, a divine frequency that the ancients knew and we have forgotten? In recent years, a number has gained almost mythical status in certain circles, 432 Hz. Proponents call it the natural frequency of the universe, a tone of pure mathematical harmony that resonates with the human heart, the patterns of nature, and the very fabric of space. They point to claims that ancient instruments, from Tibetan singing bowls to Greek lyres, were tuned to this pitch. The tantalizing suggestion follows that perhaps the architects of the hypogeum or the Great Pyramid designed their chambers to amplify this specific, sacred frequency, tuning their stone instruments to the cosmic hum. It is a beautiful and compelling idea that we might walk into these spaces and literally hear the key note of creation. The search for such intentional harmony extends beyond a single pitch. A growing field within archaeoacoustics meticulously measures the dimensions of ancient temples, analyzing the ratios of room lengths, widths, and heights. The goal is to see if these spaces were built according to harmonic proportions, like the perfect musical intervals of an octave or a fifth. Did the builders use a sacred geometry of sound, where the very blueprint of a temple was a frozen chord, waiting for a voice or a drumbeat to bring it to life? When you stand in a space whose dimensions create a perfect harmonic ratio, the sound within it is not just loud, it is coherent and pleasingly balanced, as if the architecture itself is in tune. This is the fascinating frontier where measurement meets mystery. From a strict scientific standpoint, the evidence for a universal sacred frequency like 432 Hz is shaky at best. The tuning standards for music have varied wildly across cultures and centuries, and there is no verifiable historical record proving the ancients privileged this one tone above all others. The harmonic ratios found in temple dimensions are often compelling, but critics argue they could be a byproduct of other architectural needs, like structural stability or symbolic numerical systems. The line between intentional acoustic design and a happy, awe-inspiring accident is incredibly difficult to draw with certainty thousands of years later. Yet, to dismiss these ideas entirely is to miss their profound emotional truth. Whether or not a chamber is tuned to 432 Hz is almost beside the point. What is undeniable is the raw, transformative power these spaces still hold. When you hear a deep chant resonate through a stone corridor or feel a drumbeat vibrate up from the floor, you are not just hearing sound. You are feeling it in your bones, in your blood. That physical sensation bypasses the modern, analytical mind and speaks directly to something older, a primal part of us that recognizes vibration as a fundamental force. The search for the divine frequency, then, may be less about uncovering a lost scientific formula and more about rediscovering a lost mode of experience. It is the recognition that the ancients built environments to engage the whole human being, not just the eyes or the intellect. They crafted spaces where sound could become tangible, where music could become medicine, and where a simple tone could feel like a conversation with the universe. This emotional resonance is the real treasure, and it is something we can still access today, not by solving an equation, but by simply listening with more than just our ears. The emotional resonance of ancient stone finds its echo in the soaring vaults of a much later age. In the heart of medieval Europe, master builders embarked on their own quest to touch the divine through sound, raising Gothic cathedrals that were as much instruments of acoustic wonder as they were monuments of faith. These immense structures, like Chartres Cathedral or Notre Dame de Paris, represent the pinnacle of a sacred acoustic tradition, consciously engineered to create a very specific heavenly atmosphere. Step inside on a quiet day and clap your hands just once. The sound does not stop, it travels upward, bouncing off the distant stone ribs of the vaulted ceiling, swirling around the forest of pillars, and returning to your ears as a complex, slowly fading tale of echoes that can last for 10 seconds or more. This is not an architectural flaw, it is the entire point. That incredibly long reverberation time was the perfect medium for the sacred music of the era. When a polyphonic choir sang or the massive pipes of the organ sounded, the individual notes did not simply follow one another. They blended together in the air, overlapping and merging into a thick, shimmering cloud of harmony that seemed to physically hang within the sacred space. A single chord could sustain itself, filling the vast interior with a sound that felt eternal and omnipresent, as if the building itself was singing a continuous hymn to the heavens. This acoustic effect was deliberately crafted through the cathedral's defining features. The hard, smooth surfaces of stone and glass reflected sound perfectly. The towering, narrow naves acted like giant sound channels, while the complex vaulted ceilings scattered and sustained the reverberations, preventing the sound from dying out too quickly. The goal was to overwhelm the senses, to use sound to create an immersive experience of God's grandeur that was felt in the bones as much as it was heard by the ears. Yet, these spaces also had to serve a practical purpose for communication. The same reverberation that made music sublime could turn a spoken sermon into an indecipherable, muddy rumble. If a priest's words echoed for 10 seconds, each sentence would overlap with the next, creating a cacophony of overlapping speech. The architects faced a brilliant balancing act. They needed the long, heavenly echo for music, but also areas of relative clarity for the spoken word. Their solutions were ingenious. They strategically used wooden choir stalls, tapestries, and even the congregation themselves as sound-absorbing materials to dampen echoes in specific zones. Pulpits were often placed in locations where the architecture naturally focused sound, or were built with their own small sounding boards to project the speaker's voice more directly to the listeners. The cathedral, therefore, was not a single acoustic space, but a carefully composed collection of them. It was a stone Bible where every architectural choice, from the curve of an apse to the placement of a pillar, served a dual purpose, telling a visual story of faith while also conducting an invisible symphony of sound meant to lift the soul from the earthly to the divine. This balancing act between heavenly echo and human speech reveals a universal architectural fascination, a desire to make sound behave in impossible ways. Perhaps the purest expression of this is the Whispering Gallery. It is an acoustic marvel so consistent it feels like magic. Stand in a large, circular room with a high, domed ceiling, like the inside of a perfect sphere cut in half. Now have a friend stand directly opposite you, dozens of feet away. If you speak normally, your voice is lost in the vast space, but if you turn toward the curved wall and whisper, something extraordinary happens. Your friend, pressed against the wall on the far side, will hear your secret as clearly as if you were whispering directly into their ear. The sound has traveled in a perfect, silent arc around the entire circumference of the room. The physics behind this are elegant. A whisper is a soft, focused beam of sound. When it is directed along the surface of a smooth, curved wall, the sound waves do not radiate outward into the open space where they would dissipate. Instead, they cling to the curve. They reflect off the wall at a very shallow angle again and again, following the contour of the dome in a tight, whispering path known as a whispering gallery wave. The hard, polished surface of the stone or plaster ensures minimal energy is lost, allowing the faint sound to travel astonishing distances with almost no decay. It is not an echo, it is a guided tour for sound, a secret channel etched into the architecture itself. This phenomenon appears with startling independence across the globe. In London, beneath the magnificent dome of St. Paul's Cathedral, a whisper uttered at one side of the circular gallery travels 112 feet to the opposite side. A secret passed through the air above the heads of unsuspecting visitors. In Bijapur, India, the 17th century Gol Gumbaz boasts one of the largest domes ever built. Its whispering gallery is so vast and effective that the lightest footstep, the rustle of cloth, or a murmured word circles the interior and returns to the listener amplified, a haunting chorus of one's own presence. And in Beijing's Temple of Heaven, the circular imperial vault building creates a perfect whispering gallery. A prayer murmured at one point on its polished marble wall can be heard with perfect clarity at any other point, turning the entire circumference into a conduit for sacred words. The consistent appearance of this feature in Christian cathedrals, Islamic tombs, and Chinese imperial temples is a powerful clue. It tells us that master builders from wildly different cultures, with no contact with each other, all discovered the same acoustic principle and chose to enshrine it in their most important buildings. They were not just solving a practical problem, they were showcasing a wonder. The Whispering Gallery is a demonstration of absolute control over sound, a way to make architecture defy the normal rules of hearing. It transforms a vast public space into a venue for intimate secrets, proving that even in a crowd, sound could be made to obey the builder's will. This cross-cultural obsession with directing whispers hints at a deeper truth, that the manipulation of sound was seen as a hallmark of advanced, even divine, craftsmanship. But what of a monument that stands in stark, silent ruin? Stonehenge, that iconic ring of weathered sarcens on the English plain, presents the ultimate acoustic puzzle. Its stones are half missing, its lintels fallen, and the wind whistles through the gaps where a complete circle once stood. For centuries, we have asked what it looked like, but only recently have we dared to ask what it sounded like. To solve this, researchers have turned to digital archaeology. Using precise laser scans, they have created a perfect three-dimensional computer model of the entire site, not just as it is today, but as it was originally built, with all 150 of its stones standing in their full, imposing glory. This virtual Stonehenge is then placed into sophisticated acoustic simulation software, the same kind used to design modern concert halls. Within this digital space, scientists can place virtual sound sources, a drummer here, a chorus there, and listen with perfect accuracy to how the architecture shapes the noise. The results are startling. A complete Stonehenge with its outer sarsen circle and inner horseshoe of trilithons was not an open field. It was a partially enclosed circular arena with hard, vertical stone walls. Sound produced inside this ring would have been trapped and contained. The simulations show that speech and music would not have carried far beyond the stones, creating a private, intimate sonic environment for those within. But inside that circle, the acoustics were lively and dramatic. Reverberation times were significant, allowing drum beats to linger and blend. More intriguingly, the arrangement of stones seems to have created a subtle damping effect on mid-range frequencies, while allowing the deeper, bass tones to resonate more freely. This would have given ritual sounds a powerful, low thrum, a physical vibration felt in the chest as much as heard by the ear. The architecture itself acted as a filter, sculpting the soundscape. This leads to the stones themselves, particularly the smaller blue stones that form the inner circle. Their story is extraordinary. Geologists have traced their origin to the Preseli Hills in Wales, over 150 miles away. Transporting these 4-ton stones across such a vast distance without wheels or draft animals represents an almost unimaginable effort. Why go to such trouble? One provocative theory points not just to their visual appearance but to their sonic signature. When struck, many of these blue stones, a type of spotted dolerite, produce a clear, metallic ringing sound like a giant bell or a gong. This is a unique property not shared by the local sarsen stones. Could their prized musical quality have been the reason for their epic journey? Imagine a ceremony within the completed circle. The low, booming skin drums resonate against the giant sarsens, while priests strike the imported bluestones with stone hammers, eliciting bright, ringing tones that pierce through the deeper drone. The combination would create a complex, multi-layered soundscape, a Neolithic symphony composed of geography itself. The site's alignment with the solstices adds another layer. Perhaps these resonant rituals were timed with the sunrise, using sound to literally wake the landscape, to harmonize human activity with the cosmic cycle. Of course, studying Stonehenge's sound is fraught with challenges. We are analyzing a ghost, a digital reconstruction of a space that has not been whole for millennia. We cannot know the exact rituals, the specific instruments, or the songs. The acoustic models give us possibilities, not certainties. Yet, the very fact that such sophisticated tools point to a deliberate and dramatic sonic environment is profoundly telling. It suggests that the builders of Stonehenge considered the ear as important as the eye. They may have gathered there not just to see the sun align with the heel stone, but to feel the sunrise in a collective, vibrating roar of drums and ringing stone. In that sealed circle of sound, they could have felt connected to each other, to the distant Welsh mountains embodied in the bluestones, and to the heavens above, all through the physical medium of vibration. The ringing stones of Stonehenge find a direct echo in a temple complex half a world away. In the ancient ruins of Hampi, the capital of the Vijayanagara Empire, stands the Vittala temple, a monument that takes the idea of architectural music to its logical and breathtaking extreme. Its most famous feature is the Ranga Mandapa, a hall supported by 56 pillars that are not mere columns, but a fully realized stone orchestra. Each of these massive granite pillars is a masterpiece of intricate carving, surrounded by a cluster of smaller, slender columns. The magic happens when you gently tap one of these slender surrounding columns. Instead of a dull thud, it rings out with a clear, pure musical note. Move to the next pillar and tap it, and you will hear a different, distinct pitch. Together, the entire hall is tuned. Researchers have confirmed that these pillars emit the precise notes of the ancient Indian musical scale, the sa-re-ga-ma. This was not decorative carving, it was functional acoustic engineering on a monumental scale. The builders selected specific granite, calculated precise dimensions, and carved with an understanding of vibrational physics so advanced that modern attempts to replicate the pillars have largely failed. The hall itself, with its high, vaulted ceiling of stone, acts as a magnificent resonance chamber. One can envision a performance where musicians, dancers, and priests move through the space, tapping the pillars in a complex sequence, their mallets drawing forth melodies directly from the earth, a symphony composed by architects and played by the temple itself. This stone orchestra was not an isolated marvel, but part of a deep and pervasive acoustic philosophy woven into Hindu temple design. Across India, from the towering gopurams of the south to the intricate mandapas of the north, these structures were designed as instruments for sacred sound. The grand pillared halls or mandapas were not just gathering spaces. Their soaring heights and hard, polished stone surfaces were calculated to amplify and sustain the human voice. When priests recited the ancient Vedic hymns, their chants did not fade. The architecture caught the syllables, blending them into a continuous, resonant drone that filled the entire space. The rhythmic ringing of brass bells during ritual offerings served a dual purpose, the sharp, metallic clang punctuating the ceremony, while its lingering harmonics interacted with the hall's natural resonance, creating a complex sonic atmosphere that felt alive and responsive. This was all intentional. The design served a core spiritual principle known as Nada Brahma, a Sanskrit phrase meaning the world is sound or sound is God. This is not a metaphor. In this worldview, the universe itself began with a primordial vibrational hum, a sacred syllable from which all matter and consciousness emerged. Therefore, sound is the fundamental creative substance of reality. A temple, then, was not just a house for an idol, but a vessel to harness and manifest this divine vibration. By designing halls that perfectly amplified chant and bells, and by carving pillars that could literally sing specific musical notes, the architects were creating a direct link to the source of creation. They were building a machine to tune human consciousness back to the fundamental frequency of the universe. Within this framework, the act of ritual sound became a form of technology. The meticulously memorized and recited Vedic chants, with their specific tonalities and rhythms, were seen as formulas to stabilize and harmonize the cosmos. The temple's acoustics ensured these formulas were delivered with maximum potency. When a priest's chant was amplified and sustained by the stone, it was believed to vibrate through the structure and out into the world, performing a sacred function of maintenance and blessing. The musical pillars of Vittala take this a step further, transforming the very fabric of the building into an active participant in this cosmic tuning. This philosophical foundation elevates the architecture from clever engineering to profound spiritual science. It answers the why with stunning clarity. They built this way because they believed sound was the substrate of all that exists. To create a space that manipulated sound with perfection was to commune with the divine on its own terms, to make the intangible power of creation momentarily tangible, audible, and felt in the very core of one's being. The silence in these ruins today is profound, but if you listen with more than your ears, you can almost hear the ghost of a vibration, a memory in the stone of the time when humanity built not just to see the gods but to hear them sing. Deep beneath the sands of Saqqara lies a mystery carved from solid granite, a place that challenges everything we think we know about ancient Egyptian tombs. The Serapeum is a long, straight corridor cut into the bedrock, lined with side chambers that each hold a single, monumental object, a polished granite box of staggering size and perfection. These are the sarcophagi for the sacred Apis bulls, each one carved from a single block of granite weighing over 70 tons, their lids alone heavier than most modern cars. The precision is breathtaking, the surfaces flawlessly smooth, the corners perfectly square, the lids fitting so tightly that a piece of paper cannot be slid between them. This is engineering that seems to defy its own era. But the true enigma is not just how they were made, but what happens when you are inside the chamber with one. When the space is quiet, a very low hum can sometimes be perceived, a deep, almost subsonic vibration that seems to emanate from the stone itself. If a person were to speak or chant inside the confined space with the massive lid in place, the sound would not simply echo. The hard, dense granite of the box and the small, sealed chamber would trap the sound waves, causing them to bounce and reinforce at very low frequencies. The result would be an intense, resonant drone, a physical vibration felt in the bones and teeth as much as heard by the ears. So, did the ancient priests engineer this on purpose? Or is it merely a fascinating side effect of putting a giant granite box in a small granite room? The debate is fierce. On one side, skeptics argue there is no hieroglyphic text or artistic depiction that mentions acoustic rituals in the Serapeum. The precision, they say, was about creating an eternal, imperishable vessel for a god in bull form, not a musical instrument. The hum we detect could simply be the natural resonance of the space, an inevitable acoustic result of its materials and dimensions with no greater meaning. Yet the opposing theory is powerfully compelling. The Apis bull was not just an animal, it was a living god, an embodiment of the creator god Ptah. Its death was a national event, and its mummification and burial were rituals of immense power, meant to ensure fertility and cosmic order. Could the massive sarcophagus have been designed as a resonance chamber for such rites? Imagine a ceremony in that cramped, torch-lit chamber. A small group of high priests seals the lid, closing themselves in with the bull's mummy. They begin a deep, rhythmic chant, their voices amplified and distorted by the stone. The air itself begins to vibrate with a low, oppressive drone, a sound so profound it blurs the line between internal thought and external noise. In that state, amidst a vibration that felt like the very growl of the earth, the priests might have believed they were communing with the essence of the bull god, tuning their ritual to the fundamental frequency of creation. Some even speculate further, suggesting the sarcophagi were not just tuned for ritual, but were designed to resonate with the natural telluric currents of the earth itself, acting as giant tuning forks to stabilize spiritual energy. While evidence for this remains in the realm of theory, the experiential fact is undeniable. The Serapeum was built with an obsessive focus on material, precision, and sealed space, all factors that create profound acoustic effects. Whether by brilliant design or incredible accident, the ancients created an environment where silence is not empty, but thick with a resonant potential that still hums just below the threshold of hearing, waiting for a voice to bring it to life. The obsession with sacred sound reaches a new zenith of imperial ambition in Constantinople. When the Emperor Justinian first entered the completed Hagia Sophia in the year 537, he is said to have whispered, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee." The grandeur that overwhelmed him was visual, but its true power was auditory. This revolutionary structure, with its massive central dome seemingly floating on a halo of windows, created an acoustic environment unlike anything the ancient world had ever heard. The sheer scale of the interior, coupled with the dome's perfect curvature, resulted in a reverberation time so long it transformed every sound into a lingering event. The rustle of the emperor's silk robes, the soft click of a dropped coin on marble, even a secret murmured in a distant corner, could be heard with startling clarity throughout the vast nave. This was not an accident, it was acoustic engineering in the service of absolute power. In the Byzantine liturgy, sound was theology made audible. The chants of the priests and the choir were not merely sung, they were sculpted by the architecture. A single note would rise, catch the curve of the dome, and swirl downward, blending with the notes that followed into a thick, continuous cloud of harmony that seemed to emanate from heaven itself. This immense reverberation, sometimes lasting up to 11 seconds, created a sensation of timelessness, as if the prayers of the congregation were being sustained and offered up perpetually to God. For the emperor, positioned as Christ's representative on earth, this sonic atmosphere was a direct reinforcement of his authority. His pronouncements during ceremonies were amplified and sanctified by the very fabric of the building, the stone itself giving divine weight to his words. The acoustics ensured that every ritual, every chant, every imperial gesture was experienced as a collective, immersive phenomenon, binding the people to the church and the throne through shared vibration. Yet, this legendary soundscape is now under threat not by time but by preservation. Modern conservation efforts face a profound dilemma. The original Hagia Sophia had marble floors, plaster walls, and acres of hard, sound-reflective surfaces. Over centuries, especially after its conversion into a mosque, layers of carpets were added to cover the floors, and massive circular calligraphic panels were hung on the pillars. These additions, while historically significant, act as sound absorbers, dramatically deadening the famous reverberation that defined the space for over a millennium. Researchers today use sophisticated laser scanning and acoustic modeling to peel back these historical layers digitally, to hear the building as Justinian's congregation did. Their work reveals a haunting truth that our efforts to protect physical heritage can inadvertently silence its most ethereal and powerful dimension. The ongoing study of Hagia Sophia's sound is more than an archaeological curiosity. It is an attempt to recover the intangible atmosphere of awe that was the ultimate instrument of an empire. The dense granite chambers of Egypt give way to the humid jungles of Mesoamerica, where sound took on a different, more theatrical role. Here, in the vast ceremonial plazas of the Maya, we find architecture designed not for private ritual but for public spectacle. The great ball courts, where teams competed in a sacred and often deadly game, were masterpieces of acoustic engineering. The playing alley itself, a long, narrow eye-shaped space flanked by towering, sloped stone walls, functioned like a giant stone amplifier. When a player struck the heavy rubber ball, the solid thump did not fade into the air. The sound waves would hit the smooth, angled walls and shoot upward, reflecting directly into the stands where hundreds or thousands of spectators sat. A shout from the court, the slap of a hand on stone, even the rustle of a feathered costume, would be carried with startling clarity to every tier of the audience. This was no accident. It transformed the game from a mere athletic contest into a fully immersive sonic event. The crowd did not just watch the ritual struggle between cosmic forces. They heard every impact, every gasp, every chant of the priests as if they were standing on the court themselves. The architecture ensured that the sacred drama was both seen and felt through sound, binding the entire community to the ritual's outcome. But for more intimate communion with the spirit world, the Maya and their neighbors crafted objects of eerie beauty and sound. Archaeologists across Central and South America have unearthed thousands of ceramic whistling vessels, intricate pots often shaped like animals, gods, or human figures. These are not simple toys or ornaments. They are sophisticated aerodynamic instruments, hiding a secret chamber and a carefully tuned whistle within their form. Their magic is activated by water. When you tilt the vessel, water sloshes from one internal compartment to another, forcing air through the whistle and producing a sound. But this is not a single note. The pitch and warble change with the motion of the water, creating a haunting, fluid, and unpredictable cascade of chirps, warbles, and sighs. The sound is unmistakably organic, like the call of a strange bird, the whisper of the wind, or the murmur of a distant spirit voice. These vessels are frequently found in tombs, placed beside the dead as grave offerings. This context is our best clue to their purpose. In Mesoamerican belief, the boundary between the world of the living and the spirit realm was porous, and communication was possible. The whistling vessel was likely a ritual tool for summoning or conversing with those otherworldly forces. A shaman in a darkened temple chamber could tilt the vessel back and forth, its ceramic form cradled in their hands, and fill the air with these ethereal, non-human sounds. Now, imagine this ritual performed within one of the Maya's own resonant temple chambers, a stone room with plaster walls and a corbelled arch ceiling designed to trap and amplify sound. The spirit calls from the vessel would not just be heard, they would be magnified and sustained, seeming to emanate from the walls themselves. To the participants, it would feel as if the temple itself had come alive, answering their calls with the voices of ancestors or animal spirits. The vessel became a conduit, and the temple's acoustics became the medium, transforming a simple ceramic pot into a powerful engine for spiritual encounter. In the Americas, sacred sound was both a public broadcast for uniting the community and a private, liquid whisper for bridging the worlds of the living and the dead. The liquid whispers of Mesoamerican spirits give way to a more structured, but no less mysterious, form of divine communication in ancient Greece. High on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, where eagles soared and the air was said to be thinner, closer to the gods, stood the temple of Apollo at Delphi. For over 1,000 years, kings, generals, and common citizens made the arduous pilgrimage to seek guidance from the Pythia, the oracle who channeled the god Apollo. History remembers the intoxicating vapors, the sweet-smelling pneuma that rose from a fissure in the earth and sent the priestess into a sacred frenzy. But geology tells only part of the story. What if the very stones of Delphi were also speaking? The temple was constructed directly over a major seismic fault line, a crack in the world where tectonic plates grind against one another. Such faults are not silent, they groan. They produce deep, subsonic rumbles that travel through the bedrock, vibrations that can be felt in the bones long before they are heard by the ears. Furthermore, underground water often courses through these fractures. The sound of a subterranean stream, amplified and distorted as it echoes through natural stone chambers beneath the temple floor, could create an eerie, constant whisper, a hidden voice from the underworld. For the ancient Greeks, who believed the site marked the omphalos, the navel of the world, these sounds would not have been mere geology. The deep rumbling could easily be interpreted as the earth dragon Python, slain by Apollo, stirring in its grave. The watery whispers might be the voices of nymphs or ancestral spirits. The environment itself provided a permanent, natural soundscape of the divine, a literal foundation of awe upon which the human ritual was built. Now step inside the temple's inner chamber, the Adyton, where the Pythia performed her rites. This small, enclosed space was likely not a vast hall, but a more intimate room, its walls lined with stone or plaster. Such a chamber has a natural resonant frequency. When the Pythia, in her altered state, began to speak or chant, her voice would have interacted with this space. Certain tones might have been amplified, given a strange, ringing quality or a prolonged echo that made her words seem to hang in the thick, incense-laden air. Her utterances were famously cryptic, often disjointed groans, sighs, or fragmented phrases. This is where the attending priests, the propheti, entered the acoustic equation. Stationed just outside the Adyton, they were the interpreters. It is not difficult to envision how the chamber's acoustics could have aided their sacred theater. The Pythia's muffled, resonant sounds from within could be heard but not clearly understood. The priests, listening intently, could then shape those raw vocalizations into coherent, though famously ambiguous, hexameter verses. They would then proclaim this polished prophecy to the anxious supplicant waiting in the outer temple. The process created a perfect filter of divine mystery. The client never heard the Pythia's raw, human struggle, only the refined, poetic pronouncement delivered by the authoritative priests. The architecture provided the resonant, otherworldly ambience, and the human intermediaries provided the theatrical amplification and translation. This layered system, the earth's rumble, the chamber's echo, the priest's voice trance, formed a potentially chaotic sensory experience into a controlled and profoundly convincing revelation. It suggests the power of Delphi was not rooted in any single source, but in a brilliant synthesis of geology, acoustics, and ritual performance, all working in concert to make the voice of a god feel terrifyingly, tangibly real. But how do we move from poetic wonder to scientific proof? This is where the modern field of archaeoacoustics enters the temple. It is the rigorous scientific study of sound in archaeological contexts, a discipline that uses microphones and algorithms to listen to the past. Researchers do not just walk into a ruin and clap their hands. They employ sophisticated tools to map a space's sonic personality. One key method is impulse response testing. A researcher places a speaker that emits a short, sharp burst of sound, like a balloon pop or a sine wave sweep, covering every audible frequency. An array of sensitive microphones captures how that sound behaves, how it bounces off every surface, how long it lingers, and which frequencies are amplified or dampened. This data creates an acoustic fingerprint of the chamber, a precise map of its reverberation and resonant frequencies. Another powerful tool is three-dimensional laser scanning. Lasers paint the entire site with millions of data points, building a perfect digital replica of every stone, every curve, every crack. This virtual model is then imported into acoustic simulation software. Scientists can virtually place sound sources anywhere, from a chanting priest to a drum circle, and hear with scientific accuracy how the architecture would have shaped that sound thousands of years ago. This allows them to test theories without ever touching the fragile ruins, to ask what Stonehenge sounded like when complete, or how a whisper traveled in a now-collapsed corridor. Leading researchers in the field, like those at the University of Salford's Acoustic Engineering Department or the multidisciplinary teams at the Stanford Archaeology Center, treat these sites with a blend of reverence and skepticism. They act as acoustic detectives, gathering empirical evidence to either support or challenge the stories the stones seem to tell. Their work validates the sensory experiences visitors report, confirming that yes, this chamber does have a 6-second reverberation time, or that niche does amplify 110 Hz, the frequency of a low male chant. But this scientific rigor also fuels a necessary and healthy debate. The field is sharply divided between two schools of thought. On one side are those who see the acoustic properties as intentional design features, the result of generations of observational knowledge passed down by master builders. They argue that the consistent use of specific materials and shapes across cultures cannot be mere coincidence. On the other side are the strict materialists who caution against projecting modern fascination onto the past. They point out that a long reverberation time is an inevitable byproduct of building a large, hard-surfaced room for other reasons, like grandeur or durability. They ask for contemporary texts or inscriptions that explicitly mention acoustic intent, evidence that is often frustratingly absent. This debate is not a weakness of archaeoacoustics, it is its greatest strength. It forces the poetry of possibility to meet the hard grammar of evidence. The mystery is not solved by this science, it is deepened and dignified. We are no longer just imagining whispers in the dark, we are measuring them, arguing over them, and in doing so, listening to the ancient world with a new kind of ear, one that respects both the power of intuition and the necessity of proof. The debate between intention and accident is not settled in a lecture hall, but in the stones themselves through a remarkable fusion of ancient craft and modern technology. Today, we are not just studying these spaces, we are performing sonic experiments within them. In a groundbreaking project, a team of archaeologists and acoustic engineers brought meticulously crafted replica instruments into the heart of Chavin de Huanta. They did not just measure the space, they played it. Using conch shell trumpets copied from the originals, they stood in the dark galleries and blew. The recordings they captured are chilling. The initial blast is deep and commanding, but then the architecture takes over. The sound multiplies, swirling into a chaotic roar that bounces off the granite for nearly 20 seconds, a disorienting storm of echoes that perfectly matches historical descriptions of a god's terrifying voice. This was not a simulation, it was a live performance in the original instrument, proving beyond auditory doubt how the space was designed to transform a simple shell into a weapon of awe. For sites too fragile or ruined for such physical experiments, digital archaeology provides another path. Using the precise laser scans and acoustic data we discussed, researchers build hyper-accurate three-dimensional virtual models. These are not just visual recreations, they are fully functional acoustic simulations. You can put on headphones and take a virtual walk through a digital Newgrange that is perfectly intact. With a click, you can place a virtual drummer in the center of the chamber and a chorus of chanters by the entrance. Then you hit play. What you hear is not a guess, it is a scientifically derived soundscape. The deep thump of the skin drum resonates, its low frequencies sustained and amplified by the corbelled roof. The chanting voices entering through the long passage arrive not as separate notes but as a blended, ethereal drone that seems to emanate from the walls. The simulation allows you to move your virtual listening position, to hear how the experience differed for someone standing by the ritual basin versus someone near the entrance. It makes the past audibly, tangibly present. These virtual journeys reveal subtleties that written descriptions could never capture. In a model of the hypogeum's oracle chamber, you can hear how a voice speaking into the niche excites a resonance so specific and powerful that it feels less like hearing and more like being inside a vibrating bell. In a model of a Gothic cathedral with its original stone floors exposed, you experience the overwhelming 11-second reverberation that turned chant into celestial harmony. This technology does more than satisfy curiosity, it tests hypotheses. By adjusting the virtual materials, changing a marble wall to wood or adding a carpet, scientists can hear how those alterations would have deadened the sacred sound, helping to explain why certain materials were chosen despite their immense cost and difficulty. We are no longer just looking at silent ruins, we are beginning to listen to their original voices, and what they are telling us is that the ancient world was a profoundly resonant place, deliberately engineered to stir the soul through the physical power of sound. This sonic evidence compels a final, overarching question. If cultures across the globe independently pursued this path, what fundamental human need were they all trying to answer? That sonic evidence points toward a profound human truth, one that lives not in the stone but within us. The deep hum of a granite chamber, the rhythmic thunder of a drum in a stone circle, these are not just sounds to be heard. They are physical forces that interact directly with our biology, with the very wiring of our brains. This is the psychological power of resonance, and it may be the master key to understanding why these temples were built. At the heart of this power are low frequencies, the deep rumbles and drones we feel in our chests more than hear with our ears. Scientifically, these vibrations can trigger a primal response. They mimic the rumble of thunder, the growl of a large predator, or even the maternal heartbeat we first knew in the womb. This can produce a cocktail of powerful, often conflicting emotions, a visceral sense of awe, profound unease, or deep, instinctual calm. The body does not know how to categorize such an experience, placing it somewhere between a physical threat and a supernatural presence, perfectly priming the mind for a spiritual encounter. This physical sensation is just the beginning. The real magic happens inside the skull with our brain waves. Our brains operate at different frequencies, from the fast, alert beta waves of daily life to the slow, dreamlike delta waves of deep sleep. Crucially, there is a gateway state between waking and sleeping called the theta state, associated with deep meditation, vivid imagery, and the feeling of being in the flow. This state is notoriously difficult to access through willpower alone, but sound provides a backdoor. A phenomenon known as auditory driving occurs when a persistent, rhythmic external stimulus, like drumming or chanting, begins to synchronize the brain's electrical pulses to match its own rhythm. Think of it as the brain falling into step with the beat. In a resonant temple, this effect is supercharged. The sound is not just coming from a drummer in the corner, it is emanating from the walls, the floor, the very air you breathe. It becomes inescapable. A steady, resonant drumbeat at 4 to 7 beats per second can literally guide the brain's dominant frequency down into that theta range. The chaotic noise of thought begins to quiet, replaced by a singular, absorbing sensory experience. This is where the ancient ritual achieves its ultimate goal, the deliberate shift in consciousness. The architecture, the chanting, the drumming, they were all components of a sophisticated psychological technology. The temple was not merely a backdrop for ceremony, it was an active participant, a machine engineered for transformation. By orchestrating this overwhelming sonic environment, the priests could guide entire groups of people into a shared, altered state. In this collective trance, the boundaries of the self soften. The individual ego diminishes, and a powerful sense of unity with the group and the sacred space takes hold. Visions become more likely, suggestions from a priest or oracle carry immense weight, and abstract concepts of gods or ancestors feel tangibly, vibrantly present. The ritual was not about describing a connection to the divine. It was about using sonic vibration to manufacture the physiological and psychological conditions where that connection was felt as an undeniable reality. The awe was not symbolic, it was a biochemical and neurological event, carefully induced by the marriage of sacred sound and resonant stone. So the next time you feel a deep bass note vibrate through your body at a concert or in a cathedral, you are touching the edge of this ancient knowledge. You are feeling, however faintly, the same lever that ancient builders pulled to open doors in the human mind. Yet for all the compelling soundscapes, a critical question hangs in the air. Are we hearing a master plan or simply the echoes of coincidence? Many serious scholars urge caution, reminding us that the line between brilliant design and fascinating accident is incredibly thin. Their skepticism is not a dismissal but a necessary part of the scientific process, and it reveals just how complex this mystery truly is. The core counter-argument is elegantly simple. Ancient builders needed their monuments to last. To achieve that, they used the hardest, most durable materials available: granite, marble, limestone. These stones are not just strong, they are also, by their very physical nature, superb reflectors of sound. Constructing a large, impressive space from such materials will almost inevitably create significant reverberation and resonance. Is a long echo in a cathedral a sacred design feature, or is it simply what happens when you build a very large room out of stone? The same logic applies to the narrow corridors and domed chambers. A long entrance passage makes a tomb feel more profound and secluded. A corbelled roof is a brilliant solution for spanning a space without arches. A domed ceiling symbolizes the heavens. These choices have powerful visual, symbolic, and structural reasons that have nothing to do with acoustics. The wonderful sonic effects we measure today could very well be a secondary byproduct, a happy accident of decisions made for entirely different purposes. This leads to another potent critique: the risk of modern projection. We live in an age of sophisticated acoustic engineering, of concert halls meticulously tuned by computers. It is tempting to look at an ancient temple and see a primitive version of our own technology, to assume that because we can measure a resonant frequency, the builders must have intended it. But did they possess the same conceptual framework? Without written texts or diagrams that explicitly discuss sound manipulation, we are often interpreting their intentions through the lens of our own knowledge. We might be hearing a symphony where they only heard the stones settling. A key logical trap in this search for patterns is known as the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. Imagine a shooter who fires a bullet at a barn wall, then walks over and paints a target bullseye perfectly around the hole. He then claims to be a marksman. In archaeoacoustics, the fallacy arises when we measure a site, find an interesting acoustic effect, and then draw a target around it, declaring it proof of intentional design. We might highlight the one chamber that rings like a bell, while ignoring the 10 others in the same complex that do nothing of the sort. We connect the dots after the fact, creating a pattern that feels meaningful but may not reflect the original blueprint. The most rigorous scholars demand more. They ask for statistical significance, for patterns that repeat not just in one spectacular room, but across an entire architectural tradition in a way that cannot be explained by chance or common construction techniques. They ask for evidence from the culture's own words. Why, for instance, do we have extensive Egyptian texts on astronomy, medicine, and mythology, but no clear treatise on sacred acoustics? This healthy debate does not diminish the wonder, it deepens it. It means the mystery is alive, contested, and evolving. It forces the poetic interpretation to meet the hard scrutiny of evidence. The question is not settled, and that is what makes the investigation so thrilling. We are left not with a neat answer, but with a spectrum of possibilities, from pure accident to profound intention, with a vast and fascinating gray area in between. This gray area is where the most intriguing work happens, pushing researchers to listen more carefully, measure more precisely, and question their own assumptions. It ensures that the silent stones continue to challenge us, not just to hear their echoes, but to truly understand the minds that raised them. The debate over ancient intention fades when we listen to a modern symphony. The quest for perfect sound did not end with the last stone of a temple. It simply changed its materials. Today's most celebrated concert halls are the direct heirs of those ancient acoustic principles, built by architects who study reverberation and reflection with the same reverence as a priest might study a sacred text. Take the Berlin Philharmonic, a landmark of 20th century design. Its revolutionary concert hall abandoned the traditional shoebox shape for a central stage surrounded by terraced seating, a vineyard-style arrangement. This was not just for visual drama. The irregular, cascading surfaces of the terraces act like the carved walls of an ancient stone chamber, scattering and diffusing sound waves to every listener with remarkable clarity and warmth. The architect Hans Scharaun, along with acoustic scientist Lothar Kremer, essentially designed a giant instrument, tuning every surface to create a balanced, immersive soundscape where no seat is acoustically poor. This is not guesswork, it is the application of principles observed for millennia. Hard surfaces reflect, complex shapes diffuse, specific volumes sustain. The goal remains identical to that of a Gothic cathedral or a Greek theatre, to use architecture to transform ephemeral sound into an enveloping, transformative experience. The lineage is clear, from the marble singers of Didyma to the mathematically tuned curves of a modern opera house. But the ancient pursuit of sound as a tool for transformation has also taken a more intimate and personal turn. Beyond the concert hall, a new field has emerged, often called sound therapy or resonance therapy. Practitioners use tools like Tibetan singing bowls, tuning forks, and deep harmonic chanting, not for musical performance but for healing and meditation. The theory, though still being explored by science, echoes the oldest temple rituals. It proposes that specific vibrational frequencies can help reduce stress, alleviate pain, and promote states of deep relaxation by entraining brainwaves and releasing muscular tension. When a therapist places a singing bowl on a client's body and strikes it, the resulting vibrations travel through tissue and bone. It is a targeted, modern application of the same physical force that once shook pilgrims in the hypogeum. The goal is no longer to commune with a god, but to commune with one's own nervous system, to use resonance as a key to unlock the body's innate capacity for balance. This practice draws a direct philosophical line back to the ancient understanding of Nada Brahma, the world as sound. It treats the human body as its own sacred chamber, one that can be tuned and harmonized. Whether in the grandeur of a philharmonic hall designed for thousands or the quiet of a therapy room for one, the core impulse persists. We still build spaces and seek experiences where sound is more than information or entertainment, where it becomes a physical, shaping force. The stones may be different, but the frequency of our fascination remains unchanged. We are still listening for that perfect note, still trying to build vessels to catch it, and still hoping its vibration will change us. Even with our advanced tools, the map of acoustic history is still mostly blank. Countless sites whisper with untested potential, holding secrets that could rewrite our understanding of the ancient world. In southeastern Turkey, the staggering stone circles of Göbekli Tepe, erected over 11,000 years ago, predate writing, pottery, and settled agriculture. What sounds echoed between its massive, T-shaped pillars adorned with intricate animal carvings? The site's unique architecture, with its circular enclosures and hard limestone, almost certainly possesses dramatic acoustic properties, but comprehensive impulse response testing in this fragile, sacred space has only just begun. Similarly, the vast jungle temple complex of Angkor Wat in Cambodia presents a monumental acoustic puzzle. Its endless galleries, towering central spire, and massive reflecting pools would have interacted with sound in complex ways, perhaps amplifying the chants of monks or using water surfaces to carry ritual voices across great distances. We have marveled at its visual grandeur for centuries, but we have yet to truly listen to it. The questions awaiting answers are as practical as they are profound. How did ancient architects test their designs? Did they use temporary water troughs or lines of sand to visualize sound wave patterns during construction, a primitive form of acoustic modeling? Was there a guarded oral tradition, a lost science of sacred sound passed down through generations of mason guilds from master to apprentice that died with the last practitioner? This knowledge may not have been written in scrolls, but etched into experience, a feel for how a chisel's strike in a certain spot could change a pillar's ring, or how the slope of a ceiling would catch a whisper. The future of discovery lies in ever more sensitive technology. Ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR are already revealing hidden chambers and detailed site layouts without a single shovel touching the earth. The next step is to feed this incredibly precise spatial data into acoustic simulation software so advanced it can model how sound would interact with long-vanished materials like specific plasters, wall hangings, or even the presence of a crowd. We may one day be able to put on a virtual reality headset, stand in a digitally reconstructed Babylonian ziggurat, and not only see its painted glories but hear the exact reverberation of a prayer within it. Artificial intelligence could analyze architectural patterns across thousands of sites, searching for sonic design principles so subtle that the human eye and mind have missed them for centuries. This field reminds us that history is not a closed book but an ongoing conversation. Each time we develop a new way to listen, we get to ask the past a new set of questions. The true lesson of these resonant ruins may not be a definitive answer, but an invitation to perpetual curiosity. The stones have been waiting to speak for millennia. We are only just beginning to understand how to hear them. From the subterranean hum of Malta's oracle chamber to the solar-aligned resonance of Newgrange, from the terrifying roar of Chavin's conch shells to the singing pillars of India, we have traced a single, profound thread. Cultures separated by oceans and millennia with no possible contact all arrived at the same astonishing conclusion. They learned that by shaping stone in specific ways, they could shape human experience. They discovered that architecture could be a tool not just for shelter but for transformation, turning empty air into a medium for the divine. This was not a coincidence. It was a universal human intuition, a recognition that sound is a physical force, a vibration that can alter consciousness, build community, and inspire awe. These builders were the world's first acoustic engineers, composing spaces where a whisper could become a god's voice and a drumbeat could synchronize 100 hearts. Their temples were machines for making meaning, using the physics of resonance to bridge the gap between the earthly and the eternal. So the next time you stand in a grand cathedral or even a quiet stone room, pause for a moment. Close your eyes, listen. Beneath the modern silence, the architecture still holds its tune. These places are not dead ruins. They are instruments of incredible sophistication, patiently waiting through the centuries. They are waiting for us to move beyond just looking, to quiet our own world, and to remember how to listen. Which of these ancient sonic wonders resonated with you the most? Was it the engineered terror of Chavin or the harmonic perfection of the Vittala temple's pillars? Let us know in the comments below, and if you want to join us as we uncover more mysteries written not in ink, but in stone and sound, be sure to subscribe.